Hello and welcome. I'm Gabrielle Martin, and on behalf of the Brahma Kumaris, I'd like to welcome you to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. For those of you who were with us last month, welcome back. And for those who've joined us for the first time, a very warm welcome. It's great to have you with us, and thanks for joining. Open Your Eyes to the Universe is a series of contemporary talks and conversations, open-eyed meditations and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others by sharing their wisdoms, their insights, and their experiences. And tonight, we're in the company of author Mike George, who'll be sharing his insights with us on his book entitled Being Yourself, Seeing and Knowing What's in the Way is the Way. It focuses on liberation from ego, healing emotions, and renewing personal energy. But before we get into this, I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. Mike is a best-selling author, an international speaker, and spiritual teacher. He coaches and facilitates the personal and spiritual development of people in communities and companies in over 30 countries around our world. And as a management tutor, he brings together the three key strands of the 21st century, that being spiritual and emotional intelligence, management leadership development, and continuous unlearning. Each year, Mike leads a series of awareness retreats worldwide, and his 16 publications include The 7 Ahas of Highly Enlightened Souls, Don't Get Mad, Get Wise, In the Light of Meditation, which is one of my favorites, and The 7 Myths About Love, Actually. All of his books and publications explore the cultivation of self-awareness. Mike has an uncanny ability to appraise and unpack concepts that we're bombarded with in popular culture that inform, or rather misinform really, our everyday thinking and actions. And this is what I personally value most in reading his books. I also really appreciate the way that he makes himself so available to his readership, and he encourages questions and interactions in an ongoing way. And he does this through his clear thinking e-articles, which he describes himself as irregular. They probably are in more ways than one, and they're great. The topics vary, but they all serve to sustain the ongoing learning and unlearning that restores your capacity to really be yourself. So you can check out Clear Thinking via his website, www.relax7.com, and we'll post that in the chat box for you. So tonight, as always, we welcome your questions. Thanks to those of you who've sent them in already. We've got them and he's received them. And for those of you who have access to the chat box tonight, feel free to write your questions and we'll put them to him during the Q&A. So tonight, Mike joins us from the other side of the world where it's actually the beginning of his day. So wherever you are in the world, Mike is sharing with us on Being Yourself. So hey, Mike, thanks for being with us. I can't actually recall the last time you were in Australia or New Zealand, but anyway, it's been way too long. So even though your visit this time is virtual, it's great to have you with us. So welcome, Mike, to Down Under.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Thanks very much. It's really nice to be here. Thank you very much to everyone for tuning in at this. Well, it is very early in the morning here. I'm sure it's just getting dark at your end. So it's probably useful just to start with the real introduction of me, apart from the litany of books and achievements that you mentioned. And so my journey began, I guess, about 35 years ago when I woke up one day and felt very stressed out, and life just wasn't kind of working for me at the time. So I wandered down to Australia, as you do, and it was in Oz that I began to learn and practice meditation, basically. And that was a real eye-opener for me. The realizations came thick and fast. And to cut a long story short, about 3 years later, I started doing what I've been doing for about 30 years now, which is coaching, teaching, training, writing. I wear a variety of hats, basically. And so this particular session today is kind of the basics. It's all about how to get to know oneself in the true sense. And so I'm going to share a few ideas, I guess, realizations from my own journey and understandings that have occurred to me And I would welcome any questions or anyone who wants to give me a hard time at any stage to put those in the chat box. And if we don't get through them all by the end, I'm very happy to answer them using a keyboard and send that to Gabriel, and she'll send it on to you, I'm sure. I thought it might be quite nice just to begin with a few moments of quietness together, and it kind of helps me get sort of focused and centered, and I guess helps you to get rid of the noise around you for a little while at least, and to tune in fully to some of the ideas which you will hear from me. Now, I hope you don't listen just to me, but that you listen to yourself listening to me, because really it's about creating our own maps, actually, and our own understandings ultimately. And I'm just going to share mine with you to help you to do that for yourself. So to begin our time together, just a couple of moments of quietness and silence, and perhaps I could encourage you to look away from the screen. It seems a bit weird, we've just tuned in together, and I'm going to ask you to focus your eyes to the side or the top or over on something in the room around you. Otherwise, if you look at the screen, you start watching what's going on and you become kind of screen conscious, and we are of the generation that is very screen conscious now, as I'm sure you're aware. So if you want to just rest your eyes somewhere in front of you, and ultimately you're not really staring, you're kind of going beyond what you're seeing, and then just take your attention away from everything in the world around you, the sights, the sounds, just for a few moments, and you can come back to them in a few minutes time, and then just take your awareness away and inwards, and come back towards an awareness of yourself, and just see if you can be aware of yourself being aware. And then in your awareness, just create one simple thought. I am a being of peace. Allow that thought to move very slowly across the screen of your mind. And then, just like the picture fades on your television screen, allow that thought to fade into the background. And then notice within your awareness what remains. There's the feeling of peace, of quiet, of calm. Now the mind is silent. And you're aware there's a stillness here at the heart of your being. So let's just reside in that silence, in that stillness. For a moment. It's good. Thank you very much. So I thought it might be appropriate today just to start with the end in mind, as they say. It's that famous quote once reminded us, always start with the end in mind. And my favorite way of describing myself, or the self, is with a very simple phrase. I'm sure many of you have heard of it, is that I'm the I that says I am. That's all I am. I'm just the I that says I am. so that everything after I am is not me. And as you go through your day, as you encounter many people, encounter many situations, you'll notice that many things occur after I am. There's your name, what you do, where you come from, what you're feeling at the time. I am very angry, or I am very worried. And so we're very quick to put things after I am. And the moment you put anything after I am, either in words or in your mind, then actually you fall into the belief that I am what I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure that makes sense. I am, anything after I am is not me. But as soon as I say or put anything after I am, that begins to shape and define my sense of self. So what I'm using is what I'm not to define who I am. And that's the mistake that we all learn to make, basically. If I say I am angry, then it's like there's no separation between me and the anger in that moment. And so my sense of who I am, of what I am, is defined by the emotion of anger. But if you ever learn to meditate, then you'll begin to notice, become aware that there is you and there is the anger. And you'll begin to separate yourself, come away from the emotion of anger. And that's why there's another famous old saying, which I kind of like and practice a lot. And it's this idea that the moment you observe your emotion, the emotion begins to die, begins to subside. Yes, and don't believe me. In fact, I must say that now, actually. You mustn't believe a word I say. We have enough beliefs. So see for yourself, know for yourself. This little experiment you can do in meditation is to begin to observe, to be the observer. And so whenever you become emotional, always remember it's time to sit centered and just watch, just observe. And the moment you do, you separate yourself from the emotion. And in fact, as I carry on, you'll see that this idea of separating yourself from everything that's going on within your consciousness is the essence of self-liberation, how you liberate yourself. But it's useful just to kind of lay the foundation, especially for those who are tuning in for the first time to this kind of presentation. And I always like to kind of begin with the idea there's two energies at play in life, two energies. And sometimes we acknowledge intuitively the presence, the reality of these energies in our lives. Sometimes we even look at the world outside and watch what's on the news. We see all the conflict and all the division and all the battles between people, and we just throw up our hands and say, hey, come on, we're all human beings, we're all the same, essentially. And so this is the beginning of this idea of the two energies that are at play in life. I'm a human being. There's the human and there's the being. There's the human form and the being of consciousness. There's the human form, which is matter, and then the being of consciousness, which is mind, matter and mind. Or, as we often intuitively acknowledge, there's body and soul. So life is these two energies sort of interplaying with each other. And all our lives are founded on that reality, if you like. And so the one we're taught to build our sense of self out of is usually the material, as opposed to the spiritual, as opposed to the consciousness, the mind, the soul. We're taught to look in the mirror in the morning, and we learn to believe that we are what we see in the mirror. And if you notice, that's where your stress begins every day. As you go, is that really me? And so this idea of identifying with just the physical is really where it kind of all goes downhill. And this becomes the root of our stress, our suffering, our sorrow. as we'll begin to see in a few moments. So one of these energies is very visible, very tangible, it's very external, whereas the other energy, the spiritual energy, is invisible, internal. It's this, I'm beginning to get this sense of these two energies at play. But of course, you can't prove that you are consciousness. You can't prove that you are soul. You cannot prove, you know, that the mind actually exists. And that's why science has nothing to say about consciousness, because you can't get it in a test tube. But if you could learn to be your own scientist, and in a sense, that's what meditation helps anyone practicing to do, is to become their own scientist, is to see for themselves. Then you begin to realize there's another reality on the inside within your consciousness. It's a little bit like, you know, when you're talking with a friend and they can sense you've checked out, basically. They can tell just by looking in your eyes. And suddenly they say, are you still with me? And then you go, zoom. Oh, sorry, what were you saying? And if you're very aware in those moments, you'll notice that you went beyond the awareness of time. You have no idea how long you were away, but you went beyond the awareness of time. And you also went beyond the awareness of space. You know, where did you go? You didn't go anywhere. And so your awareness lost awareness of space. So you went beyond time and space. And yet your body had to stay in the room. Your form, your human form, had to stay in the room. So in that moment, you kind of prove to yourself that you are of another dimension, that you are capable of going beyond time and space. And if you ever practice any kind of meditation, you'll learn to do that in 1 second, and almost anywhere you are. You learn to go beyond time and space, a little bit like daydreaming, except you do it very consciously. And then when you come back into the awareness of time, space, change, movement, etc., then you'll notice you're refreshed, you know, you're recharged, you're refocused, your energy is renewed, in a sense, the energy of your consciousness. Yeah, and so it's a little bit like a way to prove to yourself that you are not what you see in the mirror. You are not what is watching going grey and getting wrinkled. Isn't that good news? It's good news, isn't it? So these two energies are essentially at play in all our lives, and they lead us into what you might call the two realities. Because we believe we're just the form that we watch in the mirror, we kind of learn to believe that the primary reality is a physical reality. It's the world around us. Yeah, and so that's what we base our sense of reality upon. But of course, the primary reality is the world within us. It's the reality of our consciousness. It's what's going on in here. Everything's changing out there, sure. Objects, people, money, jobs, they all come and go. And of course, everything comes and goes also in our consciousness. You know, our thoughts, our feelings, our memories, our attitudes, they all pass through, very intangibly, but they all pass through our consciousness. And so there's change happening at both levels. However, the one that never goes, that never passes, that never shifts, is the one who's watching. You know, the witness, the observer, the self, if you like, is watching thoughts come and go, is watching feelings, watching the intangibles, the internals come and go. And so I think I was sharing yesterday that we're all kind of involved in a common exercise of failure. That's a nice way to start that, in a sense, and it's the failure to find security in the secondary reality of the physical, the tangible, the external world, because that's what we're all looking for. We're all looking for a sense of security out there in the world itself. And that begins very simply when we're born. You know, I don't know if you remember those moments when you first entered into the world. Not many people do. But if you imagine that when we're born, we come into a world, and if we're very lucky and we enter into a world where we're surrounded by people who give us unconditional love, and there's an environment in which we can invest our trust in, then we kind of open and flower as human beings, as beings in human forms. We flower into the world. But of course, that doesn't happen for most of us. We are born into a world of very mixed energies coming at us all the time. Some very stressful, some very angry, some very fearful, some very kind of energies directly attacking us, or we're in the company of people attacking each other with their emotions and or with their words, and maybe even physically. And so we're born into that kind of environment. And that's where we learn, or we have to learn, to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves, to react, to deal with those energies coming at us. And some will say in the worlds of psychology and so on that this is how we begin to shape our personality. This is why some people, they grow up very closed and very introverted. Other people grow up a little bit more open, but still a bit frightened. Some people grow up very creative. Some people grow up with a very suppressed sense of creativity. So we all kind of form and develop different personalities according to the environment that we arrive in. And so it's a very insecure environment, which is pockmarked, if you like, with moments of security, which really means moments of love, moments of being loved, moments of receiving love, of being in an environment, a loving environment. And so there's moments of pure love, and those moments we feel very secure, very open, very easy, and very connected to those around us. And so these are high moments, whereas the moments of insecurity are very low. They're very kind of a bit painful, really, unnatural to our consciousness. So we grow, and as we grow, we go searching for those moments of foundational security, which is really love. Same thing, really. When someone loves you, you feel secure. When you're being loving towards someone, you feel totally secure in yourself. So we go searching, and this is where the search begins, is the search for security, for some stability in our life. And then we move into the second phase, which is the comfort blanket stage. You know, we all maybe had an actual comfort blanket when we were children, or maybe it was another person, maybe it was a situation, maybe it was a set of circumstances where we felt very stable, very secure, in that situation, in relationship to that object, to that person. There was this feeling of security. And so then as we grow further, we grow into we are socialized basically. And that's where we learn to build our sense of security, essentially our sense of self-worth, our sense of self-confidence, our sense of self-esteem. We learn to build that out of the secondary reality, out of what's going on around us. Objects, people, money, wealth, position, fame, or whatever. And so we learn to base our self-esteem on how we look in the mirror mornings, which of course is always decaying and getting wrinklier by the day. So then we wonder why our self-esteem is a bit shaky. We begin to build our self-worth into what's in our bank balance or what our size of our salary is. And so then we wonder why our sense of self-worth is a bit sort of shaky and unstable. And so we build our sense of security out of things that are constantly changing, and that's guaranteed to make us, to magnify actually our sense of insecurity. But then we meet occasionally someone who really loves us unconditionally and accepts us, and someone that we really connect and relate with, and we there's this feeling of now I found what I really now I feel really secure. We don't think that, but that's how we feel inside. This is this connection between security and love. Really, the search for security is a search for love. But what no one teaches us is this search for love is really a search for ourselves. Because we learn to believe in our socialization process and in being taught that the primary reality is in the world around us, is in people around us. We learn to believe that love has to come from that reality, from outside in, basically. So we start searching for love, start searching for things that will make us feel loved and give us the opportunity to be loving. Yeah, and so the big mistake in this process, and this kind of brings us to what's in the way, is that when we do find people and situations and objects and achievements and positions, etc., and we do feel, oh, now I've arrived, now I'm content, now I can open, now I'm here, I'm secure. It's very temporary. But what we don't realize is that in the primary reality of our consciousness, we're bringing what's outside into our consciousness. And we're using what we see outside as ideas, as images in our consciousness. We're using those to define ourselves. And this is the if you like, the birth of the ego. Some people, they call it attachment. It's almost the same thing. Whatever you become attached to, whatever you start using externally to give yourself a feeling of internal stability, security, is really what you've become attached to. This is why we become attached to other people, to objects in our lives, to money, to favorite characters, to our technology. We become very attached to these things. And so these things exist in two places. They exist in the secondary reality of the world around us, but they also are existing in the primary reality of our consciousness. And they exist there as ideas, as images. And so when you think you love someone, when you think you fall in love with someone, it's actually not them that you love, but your version of them that you fall into. And this is why falling in love really is a kind of fall. In other words, you bring the image of that person, the idea of that person, into your consciousness, you put it up on the screen of your mind, and you fall into that. The self loses itself in that image or that idea. And then we say, oh, I love that person, I love you, I love you. And then when they don't live up to the image, the idea, your version of them in your mind, when they don't correspond to that image, when they do something different than that image represents in your mind, suddenly the love disappears. And you're getting upset, you're getting angry, you're getting frustrated, and you're saying things like, you've changed, you're not the same person, you're not the person I fell in love with, what's the matter with you? And suddenly, if I'm aware, I begin to realize that I've turned what I believed was love into, it's just something, someone else, some idea that I'm attached to in my own consciousness. Yeah, and this is what we all learn to do. This is what we all, a kind of mistake, really. The simplest way to describe it is it's just a mistake. Yeah, I'm mistaking something that's not me, and using what is not me to define who I am, what I am. And we do that hundreds of times every day with objects, with people, with characters in the movie. You know, you watch the movie and the hero cries, and what do? We cry with the hero. Yeah. Why do they cry? Because they've lost something. They've lost their love, or they've lost their safety or security. And we, oh my God, that's terrible. And we're sitting there crying. And it's not even happening to me. It's happening to the guy in the movie. And so it's not even real. It's a story. It's just a story. And here's me becoming emotionally upset. Here's me making myself suffer because the character in the movie is suffering. And that's because the movie isn't actually playing on the screen outside. Well, it is, but primarily it's playing on the screen of my own mind, within my own consciousness. And that's the movie I'm watching. That's the version that I'm watching. Sometimes you go to a movie with a friend and then you go for a coffee afterwards and you're talking about the movie, and suddenly you're saying, hey, but I didn't see that. That really, and they're saying to you that I didn't see that. What was that all about? And suddenly you're asking each other, were we watching the same movie? And this is because you were out there in the secondary reality, the material reality. The movie was colored lights flickering on a screen, but the primary reality, the primary version of the movie, was what you were creating in your own consciousness, in your own being, in a sense. But of course, we're not aware of that. We're not aware of these two realities because no one teaches us that the primary reality is the one that we're responsible for, which is the reality of our own consciousness. So meditation is very much about the cultivation of that level of self-awareness and beginning to see, beginning to notice these two realities and noticing that I'm responsible for what is created in the reality of myself and the reality of the world around me, that material, the physical reality. I'm not responsible for that, in the sense that that's always changing and I've got no control over how it changes. I can only be the master of my own conscious awareness. So I thought it might be useful if we kind of take a moment just to maybe see if we can remind ourselves of that separation within our consciousness of the outer and the inner, and have a little meditation together, and maybe you can forget about all the words I've said and just see for yourself. Yeah, and then you know for yourself, and then it ceases to be I believe, it becomes an I know that the primary reality is within me, moi, myself. So let's take a few moments just to explore that that insight. And once again, if I just ask you to look away from the screen, otherwise you watch me, and that just stimulates judgment and evaluation of the image and what's going on in the screen. And then just to rest your eyes in front of you a little bit, find a point, where you can ultimately go beyond. And as you rest your gaze on that point in front of you, you could say that it's a sight of something outside in the secondary reality, the material reality. But then I'm sure you all have those moments when you go beyond what you're seeing with your physical eyes. And you begin to focus and be aware of what's going on within your being, your consciousness. And that's where we start to have something called insight, sight inwards. And you notice arising in your mind many thoughts. Those thoughts take the form of images, ideas. Sometimes they run together and form stories. Then I notice I lose myself in the stories, in the relationships in the stories, in the objects in the stories. And they're just thoughts. They're just stories. But now I'm sitting in the cinema of my own consciousness, just watching, observing those stories play themselves out. And I realize that's all they are, just stories. So as I sit here comfortably watching, I no longer go into the stories. no longer lose my sense of self in the images, the ideas, and the characters of others. But I'm just watching. And as I watch, I notice those stories fading away. As if they lose their definition. And here I am. Here I am. Just watching. Aware that I am the I. Until there's nothing to see. Just being. Myself. Just being. Good, thank you. So as we make our journeys on the outside, we use various vehicles to take us from place to place, cars and boats and planes and trains, and we do love to travel and see the sights as we travel. And the vehicle of travel on the inner reality to a journey within is, of course, this idea of meditation. Whether you call it contemplation or reflection or meditation, it doesn't really matter the label you give to it. But it's the intention to see with greater clarity what I'm doing on the inside. If you ever learn to practice any kind of meditation, you'll notice the first thing you probably think, the first thought you probably create is, I can't meditate. This is not easy, because there's such a crowd going on. There's so many memories and thoughts and ideas all crowding into one's consciousness. The simplest definition of meditation is the cultivation of self-awareness, but it's not really the self that you're becoming aware of so much as you learn how to meditate, you're becoming aware of what the self creates in consciousness, and you begin to notice the thoughts, the ideas, the images that are coming seemingly from out of nowhere on the inside. Sometimes such not nice feelings, or sometimes not such nice ideas and images, and I don't want to look at that, I don't want to feel this, I don't think this meditation's for me. But the secret in this very early stage is just this meditation we did just now, is to learn to see that you are not what you see. And this kind of brings us to the question of what we put in the way, what's in the way. As I mentioned earlier on, we're very good at taking what's in the second reality, the individual, the position, the possession, the situation, and bringing that into our consciousness and creating our version of that person, of that object, of that situation. And then we put that version up in the screen of our minds, and then we get attached to it. In other words, the self, the I, loses itself in that idea, that image that's on our minds. And that just becomes a habit. That becomes our primary habit. So that becomes our sense of not just what we're attached to, but our sense of who I am, our sense of identity. So the basic principle is that whatever you become attached to, it's not an attachment to something on the outside. My hand might be holding onto the chair, and you could say, "Give me the chair, Mike." And I say, "Yeah, go on, take the chair. I'm not attached to it." And I'm not attached, although my hand is attached to the chair. But in my consciousness, I'm not attached to the chair. And so you take it away. Whereas if I'm attached to the idea of the chair, the image of the chair, then as soon as you try and take it away, I will become defensive. I might even become fearful you're going to take it, or angry that you've taken it. So the attachment that I create in my own mind is what generates the emotion, the disturbance in our consciousness of anger or fear or sadness at the loss of the chair or whatever. So you begin to notice this mechanism, this process, whenever you sit quietly and learn, develop, cultivate the ability to meditate, to be more self-aware. And what it leads to really is this thing called self-understanding. You go, aha, now I know why I'm feeling the emotion of sadness. Now I know why I keep feeling the anger that's coming up. Is because I'm attached to the idea you should be doing this, and you're not doing this, and you're doing that, and that's making me angry because it's a contradiction to how I see myself, which is I'm attached to the idea of you doing this, and I've lost myself in that idea. That becomes my identity in that moment. It might just be for a few moments and it passes. But as soon as I see you contradicting that idea, and you can tell that you're attached to that idea of, because you're thinking they should do this, they must do that, they have to do this. As soon as you start having those kinds of thoughts, creating those kinds of thoughts, then you know that you're attached to an idea, an image of how you believe they should act. And of course, when they don't, they're acting in contradiction to your idea, and therefore you become upset. It's like a challenge to you. You take it very personally, and you become angry, and you then make yourself disturbed. You're disturbed by your own anger. And so it naturally leads to this third level, which is called self-responsibility. You begin to realize that, aha, it's me that's making me upset all the time, every time. It's not what the other person is doing. It's me, because I'm attached to this image of this idea of what they should do. So if I wasn't attached, if I wasn't saying they should do this, they must do that, have to do that, then whatever they do is fine. That's what they're doing. They're just doing what they're doing. Yeah, so it's quite subtle. But if you can see that subtlety, then you'll have the big life-changing aha moment, which is, I'm responsible for everything I think and feel. I'm responsible for every emotion that arises, doesn't arise from outside in, it arises from inside out. I'm responsible for every moment of upsetness, of sadness, of fear, of anger, whatever you want to call these moments of suffering. And that's what emotion is. Emotion is suffering. It's probably useful at this stage to just remind myself primarily this idea of love. Love is not an emotion. Joy is not an emotion. When you feel this quiet joyfulness on the inside, what do the French call it? The French call it joie de vivre, the joy of life. It's like a quiet feeling arising inside. It's not, oh my God, I'm so joyful. That's excitement, which is almost the same as a form of fear. We'll come back to that. But this is excitement. Don't get excitement mixed up with joyfulness. Joy is a quiet joy. And to be contented, to be the deepest form of happiness is contentment. is a natural feeling. Love is a natural feeling. This idea of being at peace and being contented within myself is these are natural feelings. These arise from my true nature. Whereas emotion arises from my believed sense of self. And it's a belief that I'm not even aware of. It's like it becomes a subconscious belief. If I'm attached to the car and someone damages the car, I get very angry. And in that moment, it's because I subconsciously believe I am the car. The car is there, but it's also in my consciousness. You touch my car, you touch me. I'm taking it personally. I'm getting upset. And so I'm upsetting myself. You just touched the car. That's all. You didn't touch me. You damaged the car. But because my sense of who I am is built out of the idea of the car, I make myself angry. And that's what emotion is, a disturbance in our consciousness, a disturbance that we create within ourselves. And that disturbance, otherwise known as stress, is suffering, is sorrow, it's a kind of pain in our consciousness. Whereas when there's a natural love towards something or someone, when you care about someone or something, that's a natural expression of one's true self. And there's no emotion, there's no disturbance, there's no suffering, there's no sorrow. So I'm not sure if you're getting that. You'll begin to see this difference between an emotional reaction and a natural feeling. And it's all to do with this attachment to something within our consciousness. And whatever you get attached to, you build, in that moment, might just be for 5 seconds, you build your sense of self out of. If someone touches what you're attached to, and it's an object in the world out there that you've brought in here, it's as if they touch you. That's why we take things personally. And when you really realize this, then from that moment onwards, it doesn't matter what people say or what people do, you can't be offended or insulted. That kind of disappears. Easy theory, not such easy practice. Yeah, so there's a nice kind of aphorism that helps me to understand this. Is it's not what you say or do that makes me feel this way. In other words, that makes me feel this emotional upset, because you do feel your emotions. It's what I do with what you say or do that makes me feel this way. So it's not what you do or say that makes me feel this way. It's what I do with what you do or say that makes me feel this way. So in other words, it's what I'm doing in here. It's my version of you that I'm creating in here. And I'll create my version of you according to how I see myself. Ooh. So if I'm not seeing myself accurately, if I'm not being myself accurately, in other words, without attachment, without misidentifying with anything, if I'm truly without it, then I'm truly free on it, then it doesn't matter what you say or what you do, it doesn't affect me. But if I'm attached to, I'm a great person and you insult me, then because I'm attached to, I'm the greatest and I'm the winner and the achiever, then if you insult the achievement, then I take it personally, because I'm identifying with the achievement. I'm identifying with what I'm not. And that's what we put in the way. So this idea of self-responsibility, this restoration of responsibility for whatever is being created in my consciousness, ultimately allows me to restore the mastery of my consciousness. And it doesn't happen just like this, doesn't happen instantly. This is not just this moment of magical enlightenment that many people some people teach and some people talk about it. For me, it's a progressive, it's a layered, there's layers of attachment within our consciousness and into our subconscious. And the more you meditate, the more you cultivate your self-awareness, the more you'll see the subtlety of these layers. And the more you'll notice, one day you feel clear and free. It doesn't matter what anyone does or what anyone says. I'm okay. I'm not reacting to anything. Nothing can trigger me today. then suddenly someone walks around the corner, and they say something and they do something, and you go, oh, what are you doing that for? And you notice there's another subtle level that I need to look at. And there's something deeper that I'm kind of holding on to in my consciousness and misusing to define myself. It's a little bit like, you know, if you do identify, and I use the car as my favorite example, is if you do identify, this is my car, that's the car's on the street, the car's in your mind, and you lose yourself in the idea of the car. In other words, someone touches the car and you get upset. It's like you've squeezed yourself into an image in your mind. In other words, you've limited yourself according to that image. In that moment, it might be another object 10 minutes later, but in that moment when someone touches the car, it's like you've quickly gone into that image and squeezed your sense of self in that image. So someone touches the car, it's as if they touch you. And that's why we trigger. We are triggered. Yeah. So you could say in that moment, I believe I am the car. You're not thinking that, you're not feeling it. It's just, that's the subconscious mistake. That's what we put in the way. And it's this idea of belief. And so you have the habit of being triggered, by anyone who comes close to the car. Leave my car, don't keep away, stop it. And so you notice that there's a fear, a tension, and anxiety that arises on the inside. Yeah, and so that's because there's a subconscious belief, I am the car in that moment. So the only way to get rid of that subconscious belief, is to realize the truth. That's why belief is not the truth. Belief is not the truth. The truth about belief is in the word belief. Yeah. If you spell the word belief in English anyway, I know there's people from other countries watching, if you spell the word belief, B-E-L-I-E-F, so all beliefs are lies. Yeah. And the reason that the belief is a lie is that the belief is something that I don't know. If you say, I believe it's raining, I don't know it's raining until I go outside and I feel the rain. Then I know. I would never say, I believe it's raining. I know it's raining. And so if someone says it's raining outside, you would accurately say, well, I believe it's raining outside. That's what I've been told. So belief is not to know. So I don't know that. I don't know the truth. So it's like a lie. And it's not that the content of the belief is wrong. It's the fact that you're holding on to it. You're attached to the belief. Yeah. And so you're trying to make yourself static around the belief. You're closing around the belief. But the truth of consciousness is that it's not designed to be closed and static. Consciousness is open and radiant and vibrant, dynamic. Yeah, and so we get locked into, we get lost in, we hold on, and we put the belief in the way. And this is why we argue with people, is that I believe I'm right, and this is my belief. And so it's like we become static, and we want to make others as right as we are. And that's why you get conflict. All conflict is really two sides holding on to different beliefs. So the only way to change this belief that I'm attached to subconsciously, which is triggered, is to realize the truth. And to realize that truth is to realize I'm not the car, I'm not the other person, I'm not the job, I'm not the money, I'm not. To realize that is to go even deeper into your consciousness. And that's the purpose of meditation, to take you back to your true nature, your true self, prior to the creation of beliefs, prior to the creation of thoughts, prior to the creation, actually, of anything. It's to bring you back to the truth of you, to realize. This is the fifth stage of self-realization. It's to realize that you are, I am, simply the I. Whether it's an I that sees or an I as an I, it doesn't really matter. But I'm the I, that's all, that says I am. Now, whether you call that I consciousness or soul or self or being, doesn't really matter. But I'm the I. And when you're in that state of consciousness, then that's the moment of self-realization. And you realize, well, I don't know if you'll like this, we've kind of arrived in a sense, is that I am no one. I have no intrinsic identity. Yeah, there's no intrinsic identity for the self, the I that says I am. It's not that you're no one, it's not that you're nothing. Well, actually, it is that you're no one. It is that you're no thing. It's not that you don't exist. You very much exist. In fact, now you're really free. Now you're really, really free on the inside, not free in the secondary reality to buy and say and eat and go anywhere, but you're really free on the inside, liberated on the inside. You know, when there's this very deep realization, you know, I'm no one. You're not thinking I'm no one, you just are being no one. And the fact that you don't actually have anything, that I have nothing. You know, no thing is ever mine. You know, all sadness, all the emotion of sadness is the belief that I have things, and therefore I can lose things. And you will lose things, because things designed to come and go. And so when they go, how do you feel? You feel sad, because you have not yet realized, I've not yet realized, I don't possess anything. I don't have anything. I have nothing. Yeah. So it doesn't mean say you give everything away. I mean, you can if you want, but everything is there in your life, but you have a different relationship with it. Yeah, it's not mine. It's just something that comes and eventually will go. And the moment it goes, it's the moment it's meant to go. And so, no sadness, no fear. You know, fear is always in the future loss. Sadness is always from the past. The belief that I have lost something. And that belief that I've lost something comes from the belief that I had something, I possess something. Yeah. So this final stage of self-realization is the final stage of realizing I'm no one, I have nothing. And actually I'm going nowhere. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, I take my body to different places in the secondary reality of the world out there, but I don't go anywhere. I'm always here. You're always here. We're always here. I don't mean here, I mean here. You're always here. And in the universe of mindful meditation, it would be present. You're always present. I am always present. And that's why the practice of mindful meditation is the practice of being aware of your presence. You're always present. Everything is moving, changing, going somewhere in the secondary reality, but in the primary reality of consciousness, there is just presence. I am present. So that's a little bit of a description of the journey, and many ideas, many images, and like a map in a sense of that I've kind of created from my own experience. And it's necessary that we each create our own maps. We each see for ourselves. And you'll create your map differently. You'll create your understanding differently. You'll create sequentially differently the many things that I've just been suggesting, and that's necessary. It's not something that should be believed. That's why I often say, please don't just believe a word I say, but now is the time to make the journey. Sometimes it's called the journey of no distance in 1 second, because you don't go anywhere, remember, but the journey within, and the journey back through those stages. Self-awareness, the thread that runs through them all. Self-understanding that arises, the more aware you become. Now I see what I'm doing inside. Self-responsibility when the penny drops. It's me that's making me upset, it's not anyone else. The other person is never the problem. That's easy. And then self-mastery, being the master of your own consciousness again. In other words, creating choicefully. And then finally, self-realization, the deepest realization, which really occurs as a state of stillness and silence that you rediscover at the core of your being. I think that's enough, eh? Blimey, I shouldn't say any more. Let's see if there's any questions. How are we doing for time? I think that's about
right for questions. There's been a lot going on there.
The whole journey in 1 hour.
No, I found myself chuckling away as various things resonated.
I'm sure you did, yeah.
And I love the clarity with which you spoke about the two energies that play in life, the human, the form, and being the consciousness. It's really lovely. And how you made that seem so natural, like intuitively body and soul. And I really like the way too that you made the connection between security and love. That being the desire for security is really a search for love, which is really a search for myself. So some lovely points. There was a comment you made. I recall you saying an emotion is a disturbance in our consciousness, and the difference between an emotion and a natural feeling. You made that distinction. Yeah. We've got a question here specifically on this. Are you happy to take it?
Sure. Any questions are fine.
Oh, fantastic. So this one's actually from France. Hi, Mike. I am actually reading your Being Yourself. It has been helping me since this lockdown with an inner world cleansing process. From your book, I'm able to find a couple of answers to understand the cause of my emotions and the different forms of ego. I was not aware that there were so many subtle forms of ego within me. I think we could probably all resonate with that. Nevertheless, I'd like you to explain with more examples the difference between feelings and emotions. Is it good to have feelings? Sorry about this question, even though I need some insight about feelings. Many thanks.
Okay, so it's a separate sort of session in itself because it's quite deep and quite and can be quite subtle in a sense, but definitely a territory that each person needs to make their own research project in a sense, because it's got to be seen, to be known, occurring in oneself. And at the same time, the challenge is translating that into language, into how we talk about it. And that's one of the difficulties in talking about this, is that in our education, there's no teaching of emotional intelligence. In other words, we don't cultivate a language in which we're able to describe the emotions that we create within ourselves. First of all, we don't learn that we're the creators, and secondly, we don't have a language. And that's why any conversation about emotions usually ends up either as an argument or ends up, I don't understand you, what are you talking about? And so in essence, emotion arises out of the attachment to any image or idea that I create in my consciousness. Yeah, I use the car as the example. It's also in the book, and if that person's reading the book, is that the car exists in my consciousness, and I create the idea, and then if someone touches the car outside, damages the car, it's as if they damage me because I've lost myself in the idea, and so there's a disturbance called anger, and that's what we call anger. It might be a big disturbance or a little disturbance, but essentially I'm creating that disturbance because I've lost my sense of self in the idea of the car. And that's the simplest way I can describe emotion. Let's describe fear. Fear is always of losing something in the future. So if you think about the future, think about what you believe you have now, and you believe you're going to lose it tomorrow, next day, the day after. So that might be another person. And so you believe that they're in your life today, and you actually believe, I love that person. I don't hope they don't go. Oh, you're not going, are you? You're doing something which is signaling I'm going to lose you. And therefore it's not love, it's called attachment. If it was real love and they wanted to go, you'd say, yeah, great, I'll see you next week, coffee, Monday, great, wonderful, have a good journey. And that would be love, allowing people to do what they have to do. But it's not love, it's, oh my, you're not leaving me. And there's fear. And so that fear is because I'm attached to the idea of the person in my own mind. And so that wasn't love, it's attachment. And so that fear is suffering. I'm making myself suffer. Because there's the fear of loss. So it's a disturbance in my consciousness. It's an emotion. It's unnatural to be disturbed in your consciousness. And of course, people don't do anything about their emotions because they're carrying this belief. Well, it's natural to be sad, isn't it? It's natural to be angry. It's natural to be fearful, which is like saying it's natural to suffer. Oh, it must be okay. And I can't do anything about it because it's natural. And this is what we use to stop ourselves from becoming more aware of what's going on in our core. Oh, it's natural. There's no point. And so we give permission to ourselves to be lazy, if you like, until, of course, the intensity of the suffering, the emotional, becomes so great we have to do something about it. Or we hit the brick wall. Oh my God, I'm so unhappy. I need to change something. And that's what happened to me. I know this from my own experience. I hit my brick wall, and that made me look inside. Mm-hmm. Now, a feeling, you will, when you're emotional, you will feel your emotions. You'll feel, I feel angry. I feel scared. I feel sad. And you'll feel, and these emotions are not bad. They're not wrong. They're just the result of the mistake of becoming attached. They're mistakes. And so you feel them. And so you feel your emotion. But if you go beyond, in other words, if you learn to be detached or to change your relationship, excuse me, I'm going to lose my voice. I've been doing too much talking. If you change your relationship with those people, those things that you're attached to, that's all detachment is changing your relationship. They're still in your life, but I'm not attached to them in my consciousness. And so that allows you to go deeper within yourself, and you come back to your original, your true nature, which is loving, which is peaceful, which is contented, which is quiet, which is gentle. And so you come back to that and then you begin to feel those natural states of being. And those natural states of being arise. They come back to the surface. And you feel it. So let's say you're feeling very loving, and so that arises into your consciousness, comes through in your behavior as care or as compassion or as understanding towards someone. And so you give expression to that feeling. That feeling becomes a behavior. Another way to do it very quickly is that thoughts trigger emotions. Oh, I'm going to lose you. There's a fear. Whereas feelings trigger thoughts. Yeah, because feelings are deep and subtle. Sometimes they're called intuitive feelings, your intuition. You feel you have to go in this direction. I don't know why. It's just an intuitive sense. And then that thought, I need to go in that direction. The thought occurs, I have to go in that direction because the feeling shaped the thought. Yeah, and there was no emotion. It's just, yeah, I need to, that's natural. It feels right. I need to go in that direction becomes a thought. So it's like a big, not a big subject, but it's like a subject that has many nuances because of language, because of the necessity to see for ourselves. Sorry about the shortness of the answer.
It's great. Very good answer indeed. Here's another one, Mike. What's the difference between desire and aim? It's said that desire is the root of all suffering, but it's also said that to succeed, we must have an aim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you aims and goals are the same things. Desires, if you watch within your consciousness, when you have a desire, I want something, then you already have it. Yeah, you don't have it in the physical, the secondary reality of the physical world, but you have it in the primary reality of your consciousness. I want that car. I want that person. I want that job. So you've already got it. And so it's in your mind. And you're already attached to it in your mind. You've already lost your sense of, I can see myself in that car, I see myself in that house, I see myself and so I want it. I want that to come to me in the secondary reality, the material reality. So there's an attachment there. And as soon as you become attached through that desire, then there will be fear of loss, or fear of damage, or in the case of desire, fear of it not manifesting in your physical reality. Yeah, so where there's desire, there's fear. Yeah, the fear of loss, or already losing what I haven't got. In other words, what if I don't get the job? Oh my God, see, you know, it's the fear coming up. I haven't even got the job yet, but I'm already fearful of not getting the job, which is a bit crazy. You start laughing after a while when you see it. Whereas an aim or a goal is like a vision. You know, you have a picture in your mind of what's going to be. Now, you've got to be very careful here, because there's a line that you cross, and prior to that line is like it's like a desire. I want to achieve the aim. And so there's a desire. Therefore, there's tension between here and there of not getting there. There's force to try and get to achieve the aim. Whereas a vision, an aim is a vision, is something that occurs in your consciousness, and it occurs with a sense of knowingness. I know that's where I'm going to be. Yeah, I know that's my aim, but I kind of sensed, I don't want it, I don't need it, but that's going to be the focus of my energy. But I know that's going to happen. So there's an intuitive knowingness that is going to occur down the road in my life. I don't have to force my way to it. I don't have to want it. I don't have to need it. It's just, I kind of know. And this is a vision. And some people, they have a vision of their life, how their life is going to unfold. And usually this vision occurs when you go deeply into yourself and you tap into this natural state of being. You know, you go prior to all the things you've learned to become attached to and want and need and believe you have to have. When you come prior to that and you sit quietly in meditation, this vision, this quiet image will take shape. You're not attached to it. It's just happening in your consciousness, and you know your life is going to unfold towards that. You don't know exactly how or why, or whether it will become exactly like what you see, but you just have this intuitive, sometimes faith, an intuitive faith that things are going to, and so this takes us into the territory of faith, into blind faith. I believe I have to have that. I have to have faith, and I'm going to get that. Into an intuitive faith, which is a knowingness that this is going to be, this is going to come to pass in my life. I don't know when, I don't know where, don't know how, but I just kind of deeply know it. And I'm sure most people have had that feeling. It is a kind of feeling to begin with in their lives at some stage.
Here's another one, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Do we have levels of consciousness, or is it only consciousness?
Yes.
Good question.
Good question.
Yeah.
The way I describe it, and you'll find different ways, different people describing this in different ways, is that consciousness is what I am, and awareness, I tend to sort of go towards awareness as different levels. Some people say subconscious and subconscious. It's all consciousness. It's just that the subconscious is outside of my moment-to-moment, day-to-day awareness. I'm not aware of what's in my subconscious. But the more you meditate, the more you lower your line between what you're consciously aware of, the usual 10% in the iceberg metaphor, and the 90% below is in your subconscious, if you want to come at it consciously. But that 90% below is just what you're not aware of. You can't be aware of it. If you were aware of it, there'd be such noise in your head, in your conscious awareness, that you just, that life wouldn't be worth living. You'd probably slash your wrists or whatever. And so meditation is lowering the line slowly but slowly. And so coming into your conscious awareness are things that you were yesterday not aware of. You could say not conscious of. So consciousness and awareness, they're kind of interchangeable in a sense. So I'm a conscious being, and right now I'm aware there's a screen in front of me. If I expand my awareness, I can hold the whole room. If I expand my awareness, I can hold the whole house, if you like. I can be aware of the whole house. And so if I expand my awareness, I can be aware that I'm in this village. And so some people would say, well, expand your consciousness. And so consciousness and awareness, because we're focused on conscious and subconscious, it's probably best to say that's primary, and then awareness is secondary. But they're almost interchangeable. Sometimes I even say that, you know, the I that I began with, I am the I that says I am. What is the I? The I is awareness. Is that I'm nothing more than pure awareness. I'm just awareness. And then, of course, you'll read many people say, well, everything occurs in your awareness. And so, soul, consciousness, awareness, self, spirit, I, they're all describing the essential me, the being, the human being, human form, being of consciousness.
Nice, thanks, Mike. Look, going into a little bit of a different terrain here, and there's a couple of questions that I think might be linked, but you can discern that one. I'll ask them both. So this one is saying, how do we disconnect from injustices? And the second question, it seems that religion is a major reason for conflict in the world. What's your view?
Yeah, I need another couple of hours for this one too. In terms of justice, you know, there's two kinds of justice. There's man-made justice. In essence, there's man-made justice through the laws that governments make, and so it's totally appropriate to keep law and order, to keep balance and centeredness in society. You know, that you know, if someone's acting or behaving in violent ways, there needs to be some kind of justice. But there's another level of justice which is rooted in our consciousness, and these are the natural laws, the laws of consciousness, as opposed to the laws of society. The laws of society are made by the state. The laws of consciousness are defined by your state of consciousness. Yeah, so in other words, there is such a thing as the law of love, you know, and the law of love reminds us that we're all connected, that we're all one, that we all are individuals, yes, but we're all connected, we're all human beings, you know, and as soon as you try to break that law, there's suffering. You know, suffering really is our attempts, a sign of our attempts to break the law. And so the law of love is suffering. It's, oh, I need to be alone. I need to be on my own. I need to disconnect. I need to be separate. And that leads to the suffering of isolation, of loneliness, of, oh, I'm fearful being, oh, no, I've got to be together. I've got to be separate. I've got to be together. And so we get lost in the two. And every time we try and be separate, we're trying to break the law, a natural law, a natural state of being, which is to be connected, to be all together. The law of identity, which we've been talking about here, is the moment you identify with something that you're not, you will suffer. And that suffering is called fear, it's called sadness, it's called anger, it's the emotional suffering. And these are signs I'm trying to break the law. And so people are trying to break the law all the time because they don't know who they are, because they're identifying with what they're not. And therefore, that's automatic breaking the law of identity, that core state of being of who I am. And this is why the world is, in a sense, it's in a bit of a mess. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's not good, not bad. It's just the way it is, the way it's kind of evolved. So it's up to us as individuals to understand, to see for ourselves why this is the case. And the main reason is we're trying to break the law. Yeah, the laws of consciousness, the laws, the spiritual laws, as opposed to just state laws. Yeah, and so if we all were aligned with the laws of consciousness, you wouldn't need state laws. We'd all be living in harmony, and everything would be loving and loveful, and love would be our language at every moment. I don't mean romantic love or Hollywood love. I mean, you know, that true love. And so that's a very quick answer to the first question. The second question is religion seems to be, the most recent book that I've done is this difference between, I've tried to untangle the difference between religion and spirituality. And there is a difference, but it's not easy to untangle it because many religious people believe they're being spiritual. Yeah, and many spiritual people, they have a resistance towards religion, which means they're not being spiritual. So trying to untangle the two is quite challenging, but the essence for me is that religion says you must believe this, and if you don't believe what you hear from us, there'll be consequences, and those consequences will not be good. Whereas authentic spirituality says, do not believe anything. In other words, don't become attached to ideas and images and concepts. Don't believe, but see for yourself. In other words, awaken your own awareness. And right now our awareness is very sleepy. And so awaken your own awareness of what's going on, what you're doing within your consciousness. So if I could just separate the two. So there are separations. But then again, it really depends on what you mean by religion. Some people mean different things, and what you mean by spirituality. Yeah, some people go to spiritualism and crystals and massage. They think that's all spiritual, but it's all to do with the physical, really. It's not truly spiritual. And some people think religion is well, I could go on, but there is a difference between the two, but sometimes it's quite subtle.
Mm. I think we've got time, Mike, for another couple of questions, and I'm going to ask them together, and you can pull them apart if you wish. This one's saying, even when I know what is in my way, and then in brackets, my own self-doubts, I can't get rid of it. How do I remove these obstacles if it is deep-rooted?
Okay. So the doubts arise, the fear arises, the anger arises. All these things that sabotage, we self-sabotage with are habits, at the level of habit. So if you were to break down any habit, and in this case, the habit of doubting, I keep doubting myself, just becomes a thought habit. If we break down any habit, my favorite metaphor to understand habit is the coaxial cable that comes in your lounge and feeds the picture and the sound into your TV. If you were to cut the cable, you would notice that it's layered. There's an outer layer of plastic. There's then a layer of very fine metal gauze, and there's another layer of plastic, and through the center there's a copper wire. And so together they bring the signal into your, and so that it's just a great metaphor for any habit that we have. And we are a matrix of habits. There are thousands of habits which we've laid down in our consciousness. And a habit is just a layered set of memories that we've created sometime in the past and that we've energized every day, or maybe many times a day, since that moment of laying down those layers of memory. Excuse me, my voice is going again. So if you look at the cable as a metaphor for a habit, the outer layer is the behavior. It's what you do habitually. Then there's the layer of the emotion that motivates, motion and movement, motivation. It has the same Latin root, to move. It's what moves you to act in a certain, behave in a certain way. So there's the memory of the emotion. Then the next layer is the layer of the thought, and the thought that triggers the emotion, because thoughts trigger emotions. Emotions don't just arise, you have to think something to trigger the emotion. In other words, there has to be something happening in your mind. And then the prior to the thought is the perception. You know, if you perceive the world's a dark and dangerous place, then you'll see every situation, event, situation, circumstances in front of you as a threat to you. And so because you've layered that memory of perception into your consciousness, that makes you think a certain way, makes you feel the fear, feel the emotion of fear, and that makes you act fearfully. In other words, you run away. And right prior to the going through the center is the belief. Prior to the perception is the belief. It's not rocket science. You'll begin to see this when you sit in meditation. You become more self-aware. So there's the belief the world is a dark and dangerous place. And somewhere in the past I've learned, assimilated, and I've laid down that belief. That's become a memory. So all together, all those memories, they make up the habit. And I just have to say one word to trigger. You just have to hear one word or see some person doing one thing, and it triggers, it reactivates the energy of those memories, because those memories are essentially the energy of your consciousness in a certain configuration, and they trigger and you react. Maybe I have to say one word and you react. I just have to say the word Trump and you react. All right, okay. So I say the word rats. Some people's behavior, they jump up on the chair and because that's the behavior. And so they hear the word rats. And so the emotion is fear because they're fearful of rats, because the thought is, oh, I hate rats. And because the perception is rats are bad. And the belief is rats are little killers, they're dirty little killers. And so that you see that. And so in 1 second, they jump on the chair. So that's a habit, just triggered by one word. Whereas some people, they don't have that habit. They just see, oh, rats, oh, nice, very little creatures. Oh, I like rats, they're good. And so they stay where they're not triggered into reaction. So the core of the heart of the habit is belief, always belief. So if you want to be free to change your habit, you're going to have to realize the truth. Belief is not the truth. Yeah, and so that the only way to realize the truth is to come to a deeper level of your consciousness or your awareness, your conscious awareness. You have to come to a deeper level prior to that. You have to return to prior to that, the creation of the moment you created that belief. Yeah, and that means discovering the truth of you. The truth of you is that you cannot be touched. Your body can, but you cannot. You cannot be affected. You cannot. You know, your nature is not fearful and anger and sadness. That's not you. Your true nature is this state of being. And when you touch, then that belief loses its power. When you touch the truth, your trueness, that belief loses its power. And so all the other levels of energy that how you've laid down on top of that, around that, they lose their power, they lose their effectiveness, and the habit atrophies. You don't fight habits. You don't change. You don't force the habit to change. You just let it atrophy by focusing your attention, your awareness on a deeper level of truth. And that's how you change, you free yourself from all the habits that currently make up your persona, your personality. And so this is why we use the word transformation. You transform, what trans really means to transcend. I keep doing this, but you go above and you reconnect with your higher self or your deeper self. Higher, deeper, language is so funny. And so transcend, you transcend, you go above. Transform, you go above the form that you've created out of the belief, the perception, and there's a form in your consciousness. You transform, so they disappear, and you feel and you look and you act in a transformed way. Ation, transformation. Ation means action. So this is the action of transformation. Sorry about that. Again.
It's great, Mike. Look, unfortunately, we are running out of time here.
I think so, yes.
But look, it's been really wonderful. Thanks for all your questions. To everyone who's actually asked some questions. We haven't been able to ask them all to Mike, but I will send them to him, and he's promised that you'll receive a typed response, and I'll forward them to you when he does that. Mike, we have got time for a guided meditation into that space of our authentic real self and that deeper level of truth. So if you'd like to share that with us, that would be lovely.
Okay, just to finish off. It's good. So once again, just focus your attention on something in the room, beyond the screen, to the side of the screen. Just rest your eyes there. And again, I'll share a few thoughts, see if you can create your own version of what's sometimes called the journey of no distance in 1 second. As I come back to myself, letting go of the world around me for a few moments, and just take a moment to be aware of myself, being awareness itself. And I'm aware of myself, watching what's going on in my body. So I watch my breath. Just follow your breath. But notice I'm the observer, the watcher, the witness. And notice myself becoming very quiet and peaceful on the inside, within my consciousness. A feeling of peace. This feels naturally easy. And even with this feeling, I'm so aware. My awareness is clear, calm and clear. I recognize this as my true inner state. The mind is quiet. Waves of feeling have moved into the background. And there's a stillness. Here at the heart of my being. Silent and still. Silent and still. And then I bring my awareness out, back out into the room around me. But I bring that stillness with me. So as I listen through these ears, I hear from that stillness. As I look through these eyes, I see from that stillness. Thank you.
Mike, it's been illuminating having you with us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your insights so openly, and also thank you for your stillness. It's been beautiful. So from our hearts, our thanks and our love.
Thank you. Reciprocated. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.
Look, to our viewers, as mentioned earlier, you can stay connected with Mike via his website, www.relax7.com, or you can email him directly if you have a question, and that's at mike@relax7.com. And as mentioned earlier, we'll put all those questions that you've placed in the chat box and we haven't had time to ask him tonight. We'll send those through to him and you'll get a response that way. Now, look, for those of you who want to get one of his books at discounted prices, please check out our Eternity Inc. online bookshop here in Australia. It's always not-for-profit prices, and Eternity Inc. has a full range, excuse me, has a full range of Mike's books, which not only include Being Yourself, but many of his other books as well. And at the moment, it's 40% off his complete range at Eternity Inc. www.eternityinc.com.au. Now, the sale ends on Sunday, the 5th of July, 2020. If any of you would like to learn Raj Yoga meditation online and free of charge, please visit our website for something special near you. And finally, I'd like to tell you about our next episode of Open Your Eyes to the Youniverse. It's with Dr. Roger Cole and Dr. Nirmala Kajaria on 25 July, and they're speaking on healing heart and soul. Dr. Nirmala combines the pragmatic qualities of a medical doctor with a subtle spiritual understanding of a world-renowned yogini. And she really does believe that and understands that the mental and emotional balance can be enhanced and supported by the use of meditation. Dr. Roger Cole has been a palliative care specialist for 30 years and has spent 20 years of his time as an associate professor and director of palliative care in the local region of Illawarra and Shoalhaven areas. He's the author of books as well, and he speaks on the sensitive issues that face us in death and is equally versed in how we maintain inner happiness and peace. So together, they're going to be talking about healing heart and soul on Saturday, the 25th of July. And that's at 6 p.m. AEST. And so it's now time to say goodbye. It's been a great evening, and it's been a fantastic opportunity to see and engage with Mike George. It's been wonderful. Thanks for joining us, and thanks too for your questions. We look forward to being with you next month on the 25th of July. And until then, reflecting on Mike's insights, may you enjoy and appreciate being yourself. Take care. Om Shanti.